So let's talk about a great deal 40k discount box set, a Space Marine release for Captain Centos, made to order terrain, DMCs and mysterious statements from Games Workshop, the winner of Games Workshop's latest grand tournament, and all manner of previews, teasers, hints and releases from the last couple of weeks, with a fairly enormous Warhammer news roundup. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought we'd go through some Warhammer 40k news. Often I quite like to do these videos on the channel, just to round up all the news and topics that I maybe didn't think needed an entire long video all to themselves, but I still found interesting. It does seem to have been a little while since I've done those, so quite a lot has built up. All manner of box set releases, good 40k deals and things, and a whole bunch of interesting little announcements and statements by Games Workshop. There's honestly about too much to summarise, so I'll just go through each thing going at a fairly rapid pace. At the end I'll also just talk about a couple of giveaways as well, the channel giveaway for August, which is a big tank column one, and also an IGH charity raffle going to some good causes for a whole bunch of Space Marines. Absolutely loads to talk about though, so let's jump straight in. And first up we have the release of Dawn of War Onslaught. This one was the box game to go alongside the sort of remastered style edition of the Dawn of War game, and this was one of the ones that leaked early, showing enough detail about the box set that we could tell that it was the Honoured of the Chapter sprue that was in it, the one with the Judaseer, Chaplain and Blade Guard and their Ancient from the Indomitus box. Maybe a bit of a curious choice for the Blood Ravens, but I guess just going with a single sprue that contains a whole bunch of fun and interesting Space Marine characters. It seems that certain places are now starting to sell that. I've seen reports of people saying that it's gone on sale in Targets for literally just $50 for the whole box set. Some of these Target exclusive style things tend to be unusually good deals on Games Workshop miniatures, and this one's no exception. Usually if you bought this directly from Games Workshop, you'd be paying $170 for the Honoured of the Chapter sprue, so a pretty enormous discount there if you did want to pick these up. Imagine that these ones will sell absolutely as fast as anyone can find them. Usually for $50 that wouldn't even get you 3 Blade Guard or 3 Eradicators, and the box comes with 3 of each and then 3 other characters as well. So if you do happen to see these ones in passing or check out stock of your local Targets, then it certainly could be a good one to pick up for Space Marine collectors out there that don't already have one. I'm not sure as to whether or not they're coming to other stores around the world. I know there's been similar sort of releases that might have come to Barnes & Noble and things. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments if you know any more about that. One interesting set of datasheets that have been shared around online are some Blood Angels Epic Hero rules. Seems that someone had posted these ones to Reddit, basically with epic heroes with points cost rules for a Chaplain Castiel and a Judaseer Zacharias. Kind of interesting little datasheets that have the Blood Ravens keyword on the bottom right hand corner of them, and then also a points cost to field them in game. They're really quite close to their standard Primaris equivalents for the Chaplains. The Chaplain's differences are that he doesn't have the cancel battle shock thing, but instead he gets a 4 back and charge and a 5+ feel no pain personally. Otherwise I think he is the same. And then the Judaseer swaps out the gain attacks for slaying characters for a boosted consolidate for his unit. They're not really so enormously different compared with the standard datasheets, so I guess could be some interesting enough fun factor datasheets for casual games. I do say casual games because the vast majority of these style ones tend to be Warhammer Legends, though weirdly enough, at least from the photos that have been posted, I can't actually see any reference that they're actually Legends here. So I don't know if you could make some sort of argument that you could play them in tournament games while giving up all the Space Marines, though obviously the general context does feel like they're probably not intended for that. They probably wouldn't be the most overpowered thing in the world, though the Chaplain variant maybe feels like he's got some marginal gains versus the generic Chaplain one for the 5-point difference. Sticking with Space Marine releases, and Captain Centos' release has been confirmed. Here's Games Workshop's irregular one for their store milestones. I think they had one for 100 stores to start with, then he made a reappearance for 100 stores in North America in 2016. Now he's back in 2025 it would seem in Primaris form. And they've made 2 different centenary style announcements for this one. First up, they said it was the 200th store in the USA, though in this most recent announcement they said it's 500 stores between Europe and North America. But whatever the milestone is, they're having a celebration and releasing a Space Marine miniature alongside it. This Captain Centos model seems to be painted up in the colours of the Ultramarines 3rd Company, and with a slightly retro paint scheme, with some nice hazard stripes on the Power Fist. Apparently his release date is going to be on the 9th of August, and he'll be available in Warhammer stores only. So obviously not very convenient for all the masses of people out there who don't have one nearby. And it's going to be a one and done miniature, available while stocks last. It's in that sort of Warhammer commemorative packaging. Judging by some of the previous ones of them, the pricing will likely be somewhere around the sort of £27 or $45 mark, probably similar to Games Workshop's Epic Heroes. Some of them are maybe a tiny bit cheaper than certain other character pricing though. You might get some sort of Legends datasheet, though I suspect that most people will just field him as a standard captain with a bolt rifle and power fist. It's already a fully legal loadout in game. Here's some versions of him in the past. He was released in 1991, and then as a 100-store centenary one in 2016, and has kept a fairly similar kind of pose. With his weapon pose and colouring, quite a lot of people have been briefly deceived into thinking that they were seeing a reincarnated Pedro Cantor. And just with the overall pose and styling, I wonder if this is one of the miniatures that's sort of a Games Workshop homage to a different miniature they're not going to make a remake of in the near future. There are at least a few overlaps with him, including the helm looking kind of similar. It could just be that Space Marine captains don't look all that far apart, particularly if they have the same sort of helm on. It'd obviously be cool to see an actual Pedro Cantor remake. Here's a few more pictures of different angles as well as the actual miniature being on sale. They've got a couple of other things, apparently a free pin badge if you go into the store on that day, and then they've got one of their collectible coin things, that one ties to a £60 purchase. Next up, I had another look in on Games Workshop's merch helmet thing that they teased in their big reveal stream on Friday. This one's made by Joy Toy, and it's basically a wearable Space Marine helmet with some light up eyes, so you can do a little bit of Warhammer cosplay. I had a look at the pre-order prices for it. Looks like it will set you back a bit, £115 or $140 US. I saw one channel viewer who messaged me and said that the shipping cost is absolutely enormous to Australia, being even more than the helmet itself. It seems that not everything has been particularly well received about that. Their social media posts promoting the helmet basically seem to be a lot of people talking about this, explaining why the Galactic Armory cosplay company got a cease and desist. Seems like they've been uploading some 3D printable 40k style helmets to their Patreon page, and I guess Games Workshop didn't want their official merch to have competition. I've certainly been fairly trigger happy with the cease and desist so far in 2025. I suppose probably not unexpected given Games Workshop's history of being rather protective of their IP. It just seems unlikely that anyone who's selling Warhammer related items is going to have to wait too long before Games Workshop's lawyers come calling. I'm not sure if they were selling things directly or if it was more crowdfunding things, but either way they don't really seem to care too much. It might have been nice if they tried to go through the route of legitimizing them more and actually working with them. It usually seems the better road if there's the option. Before we move on to all the other news and releases, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in ObjectiveMarkers.com. As you might guess, they're a UK based maker of themed objective markers, having a bunch of ones that happen to be the right size for Warhammer 40k, and each with a little bit of faction theming. Their main offering are these things, really quite a common thing for people to make themselves. Basically a fancy objective marker made of a flexible silicon mat, a 40mm marker in the centre, and then a 3-inch scoring zone that extends beyond that, so you can basically see really obviously whether or not a miniature is on an objective or not. They sent me a few of these and they do have quite a nice look and feel to them. I quite like the background being clear, it means that you can still see the battlefield surface through it, so it doesn't detract from that quite so much, while still adding a little bit of faction theme. Their normal offerings are £25 or $35 for 6 objective markers. They ship to the UK and USA. I've got a bunch of different options that could tie in with a fair few factions, some Golden Guardian ones, Space Swarms, and ones for Power Armoured Warriors, and other ones for Chaos Designs, Greenskins, and all your enterprising space robot needs. As part of their launch promotions, they're also shipping 10 dice with each order at no extra cost. And they do have some other things on their web store as well. They have some clear ruin terrain bases as well, which could be handy enough for showing the footprints of ruins. In any case, check them out, link down in the video description if you'd like to take a look over their range, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this one. Next up, Games Workshop had an enormous tournament last weekend, the Tacoma Open, and they had coverage of the rounds being streamed across the weekend. It was a massive, great 450 player grand tournament, so guarantees that the players getting towards the top of that are going to be the best of the best. Incredibly smart players playing with hyper-optimized armies. Just from the amount of factions that were placing quite high, it did seem kind of indicative of 40k's balance problems at the moment. Death Guard Knights and Chaos Knights kind of massively overrepresented compared with the rest. It looks like the eventual winner was this list by Steve Trimble, placing first and going 8-0 I think. And using Mortarian's Hammer for this one, a Death Guard list that's focused on demon engines and vehicles. You get to nominate units to be automatically afflicted at the start of the battle round, which could be nice for buffing shooting or allowing Death Shroud to deep strike close without having to do any setup. And this army is capable of putting out a fairly enormous amount of scary firepower. There's 3 of the very efficient bloat drones with the blight launchers, with massive strength 10 and damage 3 firepower, 2 mephitic blight haulers, and then interestingly enough really going heavy on the indirect fire, 3 plague burst crawlers with entropy cannons to back up their mortars, and there's a lone operative Lord of Virulence to command them, marking targets for some big rerolls to hit, and also having a bonus reroll wound rolls of 1 thrown in from his enhancement. Otherwise, the list is fairly simple. 3 units of 10 Poxwalkers for some nice chaff unit rolls and infiltrates, and 3 units of Death Shroud Terminators to deep strike close and get the jump on the enemy, 2 of them led by the Lord of Contagion to take out some mainline threats, the other one still scary enough on its own though. Obviously a pretty amazing feat to win a tournament where you have to go through 8 rounds of players getting steadily harder and harder to beat. I suspect that people aren't really too surprised to see Death Guard at the top though. It seems that rounding out the top 6, Tyranny is placed in 2nd, and Imperial Knights 3rd and 4th. Skari's Drukari went undefeated as well, and there was a GTL occult list that went undefeated for the first 7 games too. Overall pretty scary stuff. It does seem that Death Guard and Knights are probably going to remain the armies to beat until Games Workshop shakes them up in a serious way. I noticed on Games Workshop's web store that a couple of kits seem to be out for reboxing. The Commandos and the Sisters Novitiate kill teams no longer seem to be on sale. These were 2 of the earlier kill teams that Games Workshop came out with, and it looks like they're basically being retired from the kill team game, and they're not going to be sold in the kill team boxes anymore, but instead are going to get reboxed as Warhammer 40,000 kits. I'm not sure if they'd have any sort of messing around with the contents for these ones. I certainly hope not. The Death Corps veterans, when they got a standard infantry release, had one of their sprues taken out of the box. I believe that these ones are just as they are though, so hopefully should stay the same. Maybe if they aren't selling the tokens and things with them, they might even come at a small price decrease when they come back in 40k packaging. I guess we'll see on that front though. It does seem like a long shot coming from GW. A few days back, Games Workshop came out with this slightly weird post. I saw this posted to their social media, I guess by the Black Library team, and it's phrased in a very strange and corporate sounding way, but cutting through their thanks for the passion of the Warhammer community, humbling them. It basically sounds like they're trying to address rumours or conspiracy theories or something regarding them no longer working with a publisher in Ukraine, to which they basically say that it was an isolated deal that has gone badly for some reason. They said it wouldn't be right to share why. But I guess while basically telling us nothing, we're basically trying to communicate that it's not some sort of big political move or anything like that, but more an individual deal that fell through. I must admit though, it seems like a very weird way to communicate it, basically going for super corporate language and being all humbled by the passion of the community and things like that, and then basically also saying that this happened and we're not telling you any more about it, just raises more questions than answers. Kind of to the point where I wonder whether it was really a good idea to post anything in the first place. Next up, there's a made-to-order terrain thing that's going on at the moment. If anyone's interested to pick up some Citadel Woods, one of their classic kits that's coming back for a little bit, then they're up for sale at the moment. One stand of these little wooded trees comes in at £30, €40 or $50. I guess not particularly well functional terrain for Warhammer 40k at the moment, though I guess you could always house rule it that it blocks line of sight in a similar sort of way to Ruins if you wanted it to have more impact on the battlefield. I feel like as classic terrain kits go, it's maybe one of Games Workshop's slightly more popular ones. I remember them painting them up in a bunch of different styles in White Dwarf when they had them released. For Games Workshop's made-to-order things, they're usually only orderable through Games Workshop themselves, and then turn up within 180 days after you've made that order. So it wouldn't necessarily be coming anytime soon, but I guess they can print the right amount for how many people want them. Alongside that, they've got a bunch of other pieces as well, these ones themed around the Stormcast Eternals and Age of Sigmar. Probably not quite as big an interest for 40k players in general, but they're still really quite nice pieces I think. Feels like maybe it could do for something somewhat appropriate to the sort of Space Egyptian style factions like Thousand Suns or Necrons. Some of them might need a bit of conversion work to make them look the part, but don't really feel that far away. Next up, a week or so back, I shared a rumour about the Deceiver. Basically, a source told me that there was a good chance there was a Deceiver model coming soon, though it seems that some wires had been crossed somewhere, as it wasn't a Games Workshop model, but instead seems to be a sort of third-party alternative sculpt by RTLW called Hypnotherion, which people in the comments down below very quickly pointed out that that was probably what the source was referring to. I did try and do a bit of damage control on that one, changing the thumbnail title and posting pinned comments and replying to some people. I can absolutely see why people might have got confused between Games Workshop's miniatures and this though. It certainly seems like it's painted up in a heavy metal kind of style. And the features of the model seem pretty consistent with the Void Dragon with some crackling lightning and the sort of pixelated style effect, plus I guess some black stone at the back. I must admit I really do quite like the sculpt for this one. I really like the features of the 2 disembodied hands floating and sort of held up by his cowls. And looks a whole load more eldritch horror compared with the current model that desperately needs an update I think. Might be of interest to some folks out there who'd quite like an updated Deceiver style miniature and don't want to wait for Games Workshop to make one. Let me know your thoughts on the sculpt though, and the irony certainly isn't lost on a Deceiver having deceived me. Next up, I was interested to check in on the Saturnine Box Sales, this one of course being the great big launch box for the Horus Heresy. 50 miniatures in here, including the great big Dreadnought and the enormous Terminators. I've seen a few of these in person already, they do look pretty suitably impressive. Overall, it looks like so far the Saturnine Box Sales are a bit lower than I might have expected. I feel like usually the case with Games Workshop big box launch set things are they tend to be in kind of short supply and the discount retailers don't get given enough and lots of people can't have one. But I guess it's kind of good news in a way that there is enough supply for the people who want one, though maybe does show that at least a few people were put off by the whole drama around the Legends units. I was interested to check back on the box sales relative to my prediction polls. From one poll I did on the channel, it looked like only around about 6% had pre-ordered Saturnine so far, though a bunch of other people looked like they were going to be likely to pick it up at some point, versus in my previous polling, I'd estimated that around about 12% of people would wind up actually picking up the box set, at least based by your responses and the amount of people that tends to actually follow through on that. From a more recent poll that I did, it looks like now around about 9% of people have pre-ordered Saturnine. So maybe getting a little bit more in line with what I previously expected. It did feel like there were a bunch of things that turned people off the release though, in particular Games Workshop not really making clear which units that they were supporting with Legend style rules, and then even now it sounds like things are probably going to fall through the gaps and not please everyone. I kind of wonder on my polls whether or not people might have been a bit more enthusiastic about it before they realised that it's significantly more expensive than say more standard 40k battle forces or like the Leviathan launch box. And also it's not a limited edition fear of missing out style box set. This one's going to be available into the foreseeable future, so I guess lots of people have the chance to decide whether or not they really want it, as opposed to trying to jump the gun straight away. In any case though, it doesn't seem to have sold out regionally anywhere from Games Workshop. That broadly seems like it's going to be good news for people who want the fancy Terminators and contents of it. I had a look at the channel affiliate discount retailers and a whole bunch of those still have it ready for pre-order. There'll be links down in the video description. Toy Snowman in Canada has it for 15% off, Gap Games in Australia for 20%, and Element Games for 20%, and Taschengeldieb in Germany and the EU as well. As ever, if you did happen to be picking it up, those links in the video description do go to help support Auspex Tactics a bit, so a big thank you for anyone choosing to use those when they do. Around the Saturnine launch, it also looks like Games Workshop's doing an all-nighter event at Warhammer World, which I thought had a bit of fun factor, even if it also sounds like a slightly painful way to hobby. Looks like the idea of it is that it's a free ticket, but it reserves you a copy of the Saturnine box set, which you presumably buy. Then you get the box sets at midnight on launch, then you've got 9 hours to basically assemble, paint, and have a game with the box set. That will be kind of ambitious for the rate that I build things at least. Will be quite a cool setting to do so in Warhammer World though, serving drinks and snacks and stuff through the night. That's in Warhammer World in Nottingham in the UK. Currently their website seems to say they've got a few tickets left, so if you wanted some extremely late night and early morning hobbying, then that could be an option. For some 40k tangential releases, there were a batch of new Palatine Enforcers released. These are the sort of Hive Overseer guys from Necromunda. I've seen at least a few people using miniatures from their range for Astra Militarum style armies. They do have a pretty cool vibe and some pretty interesting looking armour. I'd guess that something on one of these is basically the answer to that Rumour engine that was quite clearly for them that we had in the not too distant past. But basically it looks like they've got quite a few kits coming for them. They've got this one of Palatine Companions with some nice fancy head crests. Then some Captains and Mastiffs, so some more robot dogs if you wanted some more of those in your life. There's a set called Sergeants and Subjugators, with a few different poses and different bits of war gear to what you get in the main kit, I suppose. And then there's some sanctioned police psych, as it would seem, called Palatine Enforcer Haunts. Apparently if they have perils of the warp, then their own suits terminate them. Finally they've got an upgrade sprue with a whole bunch of weapons bits, flamers and sniper rifles, assault shields, and a few other things too. Might be of interest to some Imperial Guard armies. There's like you can make some cool officers or scions or something out of these guys perhaps. There was a mini-expansion for Warhammer 40k casual games in a recent White Dwarf. The latest one is the last in their series of Chaos Deity themed ones. This one focused on Tzeentch, and each one of these has basically had some rules for fighting on a warp-racked battlefield of their given deity. And as ever, Tzeentch is one to have a whole bunch of madness going around. The game mechanic basically gives you a pool of dice, and then you basically flip them between yourself and your opponent to give your units buffs or your enemies debuffs. You roll 66 at the start of the game and place them at the side of the board, keeping their numbers face up, a bit like Sisters of Battle miracle dice, and then the pool replenishes with an extra 3d6 dice at the start of each battle round. The player who goes first becomes favoured, and as they go through their turns, the player who's favoured is able to spend 1 dice with the right number on it on one of the effects below, and then as soon as they do that, their opponent becomes favoured, so they'll be the ones that can choose the next buff. If you choose not to use any of your buffs and just remain favoured but deny any effects to your opponent, at the end of the turn you roll 1 extra d6 and then it flips to your opponent, so basically they will eventually get the same pool of options with 1 extra one if you don't choose any yourself. The effects are interesting enough. You can have 1 unit that can basically walk through terrain and enemy models, you can have 1 unit fire into engagement range for free, There's one for cancel the obscuring ruins type rule, so I guess allow you to fire through windows and things like that. There's one to prevent shooting against your units from greater than 18 inches away, one to gain a 4+ invulnerable save for a phase, and one to return to reserves. Genuinely really quite powerful effects there. Potentially some of them could be a bit game changing, particularly cancelling the obscuring ruins rule. The turning off shooting one could be kind of big, though at the same time the madness sort of feels like it could be rather well balanced, as basically you could try and use up effects to deny them to your opponents, and there'd be a fair bit of choice as to which effects will most help you, but which one might you want to deny as well. I genuinely feel like this one could make for a fairly fun and interesting little twist in a casual game. Obviously not going to be too balanced or anything, but maybe it doesn't break the game in such a horrific way as some of these other aspects of war do. Otherwise, for 40k relevant rules from that White Dwarf, there was also one for a Tzeentch Daemonkin style combat patrol. This one's an alternative Thousand Suns one, again kind of similar to ones that I've had for the other deity legions, and this one he gets to play with an exalted sorcerer, 10 rubric marines, 2 sets of 3 screamers, and 1 set of 3 flamers. It doesn't come in a combat patrol box set or anything like that, but if you happen to have the models then you can field it in that game mode. The core rule is a slimmed down Kabbalistic Rituals one, with just Temporal Surge and Destiny's Ruin, but without the chance to roll boosted effects on them. There's a couple of choices of enhancements for the sorcerer, and then some stratagems for mortal wounds on death in the fight phase, a +1 damage in the fight phase, or the cancel a sticky objective rule within 12 inches, which you can usually get quite easily in combat patrol, with the battle line troops being able to use it. I guess it'd be kind of niche appeal for Thousand Suns players who also have demons who also play combat patrol. There's certainly a whole ton of armies that you could field in the combat patrol game mode if you wanted to, between all the original ones and the updates and the White Dwarf ones. Sticking with Chaos, and it looks like we've got a Rumour engine that looks something suitably Khornate, basically a whole bunch of sort of Morningstar Wrecking Ball style things, and a skull on a chain as well, and people were quick to point out that it looks rather similar to certain chains and things that hang off Khan or the Khorne Berserkers. It certainly looks similar enough to the style of ones that are hanging off his belt. I guess in theory it could be something World Eaters, but seems kind of unlikely to me. We've had their codex with just the one model release, and then we've had a kill team for them already, and there aren't any obvious big special characters they might release for an end edition campaign. I might be tempted to guess it might be something fantasy setting, but who knows. It certainly looks in a similar sort of style. Over this past weekend, while we've had all the excitement of some big reveals, plus the news of the Grey Knights and Templar codexes coming, the main releases that Games Workshop have been pushing forward for are the Age of Sigmar ones. They've had Blades of Khorne and Caradon Overlords. The pre-order for that just went live on Saturday the 19th of July, so that's to be the full release on Saturday the 2nd of August. They also have that Underworlds warband that wasn't particularly well received with the big grinny faces. For 40k collectors, there's one set that might have some potential interest for Chaos players. They've released one called Fangs of the Blood God, which gets you Karanak, 2 units of 5 Flesh Hounds, and then a whole bunch of Flesh Hound style cultists. I feel like you could use all of those in 40k to some extent or another. Obviously the demons and their leader in the demon's army. The Flesh Hound cultists just seem kind of fun models though. You could maybe use them for the Gore Chosen Jackal cultist style things if you wanted a different take on them. I've mentioned this in another video or two in the past, but I'm just kind of surprised that the deal has stuck around for quite this long. Basically, if you want to buy the Ork Boyz set in Warhammer 40k, it's near enough 3 for 1. If you order in Combat Patrol magazines from Forbidden Planet, they often have some standout good deals, and it turns out the Ork Boyz are one of the better ones. Currently, at least at time of recording, they've still got issue 45 on sale. Usually the Ork Boyz kit I think costs £34. That magazine comes with the exact same kit but costs £10 plus £3.50 P&P, and if you get a whole bunch of them at the same time, the postage and packaging caps out. So I basically ordered 6 of them between myself and a friend. I've had 3 of them, so it's basically worked out as 30 Ork Boyz for £33. Obviously this one's the not particularly flexible kit where you've got certain shooters and certain choppers. I hadn't got so much of this one though, more the old style boys, so I'm happy enough to have a few of these to mix in. I was interested enough to paint up the new models. For other potential deals at the moment, there's issues 47 to 48 which builds 3 Death Copters, and then issues 49 to 50 which make a Death Dread, both of which have some pretty good savings, though not quite as standout as the Boys one. I'll leave those links down in the video description, as ever that one's an affiliate link that goes to help to support Auspex Tactics. One book release that I was interested to keep an eye on was the Silent King one, the one by Guy Haley. I did sort of suspect this before it came out, but I was just interested to see whether or not it was Guilliman fighting in the more current timeline or sort of in the past, or if there would be any enormous reveals for the End of the Dawn of Fire series. I certainly haven't had a chance to read the book myself yet. I've seen a fair amount of talk about it online. It does seem that this one's sort of set up to fill in the gap between the Indomitus Crusades and then the Plague Wars, where Guilliman goes off to fight against Mortarion. So I feel like it's maybe a little bit confusing from the timeline sort of thing, given that the current 40k narrative that we'd left off basically had Call in the Pariah Nexus and Guilliman inbound there. But it turns out that's Guilliman's return to the Pariah Nexus as opposed to the first time he's been there, potentially on the way for a great big multi-big character showdown with Guilliman, Call, the Silent King, Imitet the Stormlord, and now Vashtor all vying for dominance in that area of space. I don't know whether that's going to be the net setting for Games Workshop's big end of edition campaign. They certainly seem to have a bunch of active storylines all coming together a bit. For one other small teaser of impending Space Marine releases, it looks like White Dwarf 514 also came with a bunch of Space Marine Doctrine tokens. The cards I don't think are really all that much in themselves, basically just thin card tokens to remind you whether you've got Devastator Tactical or Assault Doctrine in effect. So it seems they've teased that there's an upcoming White Dwarf issue focused around Space Marines. I guess that implies that the recently revealed Space Marine characters aren't really all that far away, with Vulcan Estarn, the new Raven Guard guy, and Lysander and friends. Seems like when they launch there's going to be an Aurora Astartes themed White Dwarf. Finally, for the big news roundups, I'll just talk about a raffle and a giveaway. First up, there's a 40k charity raffle, this one basically being a last call for the IGH one. It looks like it's 5 days to go if you want to enter for that one. It's hosted on a site called Raffle, has been run by a guy who's done several of these before, and basically the main prize is a great big 4,000 point Space Marine army, with 3 secondary prizes consisting of 2,000 points worth of Space Marines. To my understanding, they've been painted by multiple different people to be submitted as prizes, and the aim is to raise a bunch of money for a good cause. Apparently they're being split between 3 charities, a mental health charity called Mind, Endometriosis UK, and a German young people's charity. I feel like the prize marines look pretty fun, painted to a variety of standards I think, going for successor chapter colour schemes but with a few Ultramarines characters thrown in. There's Guilliman and Calgar looking good here. There'll be links down in the video description if you'd like to check them out though. A big respect to them for doing something for a good cause. Finally, for the great big news roundup, I'll also mention the Auspex Tactics channel giveaway as well. This one's the one for August. The prizes for this one are for 4 channel viewers to get a custom tank column. The rules for it are any 5 Warhammer 40k vehicles that are under £60 or $95. Bigger plastic vehicles take up to 2 selections, but you could have some big stuff like Bane Blades or Knights or things in that. Here's a Space Marine example with 2 Land Raiders, a Brutalis Dreadnought, a Repulsor, and a Gladiator Lancer. Here's a Necron one going in for the big stuff, with Zarek the Silent King himself, a Monolith and a Doomsday Ark for some big firepower to back them up. And here's a Chaos Armoured column, a Forge Fiend and a Mortar Fiend, a Predator Annihilator, a Vindicator, and then a couple of Chaos Knight War Dogs. Their kit just sneaks in at just under the cutoff, so one way to get 2 vehicles for 1 there. In any case, whichever one you might be aiming for, there's 2 equal ways to enter, both linked down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount, that gets you automatic entry to the giveaways each month, and is of course the main thing that keeps the videos coming on Auspex Tactics, or alternatively you can support via social media and enter completely for free. To do that, do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Facebook page, that'll be linked in the video description, and then to enter the draw, a giveaway post appears on the Facebook page on the 1st of August. That one's going to be done via a Google form on that post this time, hopefully to better keep the scammers and spammers at bay. Instructions for that will be on the form, but basically it asks for a submission for a 40k mini or imagery, along with your name and date in it, just to verify that you're a real person, and make sure prizes go to real people. That post is active for 24 hours, and then after all the entries are in, I'll do the draw, using a random number generator. Everyone's entered exactly once equally, and then winners will be announced on the channel update video on the 4th of August. After I've asked you which ones you want, I'll post them out once I've received my orders of them. In any case, there'll be further giveaways each and every month, so check out the channel's Patreon page or Facebook page. There'll be links down in the video description for similar entry things. In any case, that just about brings us to end of a rather mammoth roundup of 40k minor news stories from the last couple of weeks. I look forward to hearing all your thoughts on anything mentioned down in the comments below. A massive thank you to Objective Markers for sponsoring the video. Feel free to check them out, links down in the video description. As mentioned, they've got their clear faction-specific silicon objective markers to allow really clear measurement of what's off or on an objective without having to measure out to it. Check them out, link down below if you'd like to take a look over their range. In any case though, I'll leave that one there for now. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Check out the channel's Patreon or Facebook page if you want to enter in for the giveaway. Channel patrons do get a few advantages as well, seeing certain videos early, names down in the credits for bigger backers, and various other perks. In any case though, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.